Let's talk about bimbofication. Bimbofication refers to a kink which eroticizes the transition from a smart and modest woman to an airheaded, attractive woman whose main purpose is sex. This is not very separate from feminization, which is less gendered and is meant to demean both masculine women and men alike by forcing them into stereotypical depictions of femininity. Both of these terms are meant to be demeaning. The term bimbo has been an insult since it was first coined and is even listed in the dictionary as being a demeaning term. So why is bimbofication becoming a trend once more? Articles from BuzzFeed and other news sources claim that bimbofication is a reaction to the girl boss feminism of the early 2010s. Girl boss feminism, which stemmed from the 80s goal of breaking in the glass ceiling and getting women into higher paying roles in business, is claimed to be unwelcoming for certain groups and ultimately exclusionary. Particularly, as Michigan Daily's Martha Starkle writes, it demeaned women who chose to be stay-at-home moms and women who never had access to a high-powered career in the first place. Intersections of race, class, sexuality, and other identities were cast to the wayside as women with privilege were empowered to rise to the top of the Fortune 500. Therefore, the argument goes, bimbofication works as a new form of feminism. Dissociative feminism, a term coined by Emmeline Klein of BuzzFeed, refers to the use of deadpan, nihilistic humor to cope with reductive ideas of womanhood. It is a form of feminism with no real outcome or imprint. To rephrase, dissociative feminism signifies an understanding that women will always remain marginalized. Instead of working to diminish sexism, a dissociative feminist would rather make fun of their marginalized condition and accept it as the only possible outcome. Now, if you are a feminist, then this seems utterly absurd. How can a movement which seeks to accept women's status as an oppressed class and embrace it instead of fighting against it be seen as a form of feminism? Quite simply, it isn't. There is an understanding that feminism is a good thing. It is a movement that should be supported in that vague way, just like LGBT rights, Black Lives Matter, anti-capitalism, and many others are in Instagram bios and whatnot. But just like every other movement championed by the internet as being morally correct, very few people understand what exactly feminism aims for, or they prefer to not so vocally object to it due to the changes that a true adherence to feminist ideals would require. After all, it's far easier to accept that nothing will change and slap a feminist or empowering label on it than it would be to critically examine femininity and how it is used to degrade and control women. Why give up your porn stash when you can instead ignore how the industry harms not only the actors within it, but society as a whole? Starkle continues, the over-sexualization of the female body and the depiction of women as unintelligent, with the woman abandoning her book in favor of a pink clutch, is a harmful ploy to reinforce heteropatriarchy. However, by overdoing the self-degradation in an intentionally artificial way, bimbofication works beyond the passivity of dissociative feminism, with a subversion of the once harmful stereotypes of women who love pink and are often half-clothed. In other words, Starkle admits that the goal of bimbofication, to create an overly feminine and sexualized woman who has lost all intelligence and only exists to be a sexual object, is bad, and enforces the patriarchy, and yet, somehow, she claims that choosing to do this, and to feminize and sexualize oneself with the goal of becoming a caricature, is revolutionary. This argument is just as circular as the rest of postmodernist theory on women. Regardless of who put the chains on you, be it yourself or society, wearing them creates the same end goal. A woman who embraces bimbofication is hypothetically performing for a different audience than the original concept was meant to appease, but just because the stated audience is different doesn't mean that the system at large does not benefit from the performance as well. It doesn't matter if you are sexualizing yourself for yourself. Who decided what was attractive? Does this behavior, this clothing, this makeup truly encompass an experience you enjoy? Are they comfortable? If you didn't receive societal support for doing so, would you still want to? Starkle argues that to self-bimbify means not only feeding into gender norms, but also embracing and simultaneously subverting them, when doing so is inherently impossible. How can you both embrace and subvert? To do one, you must do the opposite of the other. Subverting gender norms as a woman would be to not shave, to dress comfortably, to prioritize yourself over your appearance, and bimbofication does the exact opposite. It asks you to cling to your chains tighter and to pretend that you are not intelligent, that you are not anything more than what the men who jerk off to you want you to be. The claim that embracing an insult or a stereotype takes away its power is one that I've heard for other communities, that the N-word, fag, dyke, carpet muncher, or fruit eat can be taken and dismantled into something less harmful is a false claim. Yes, an individual can take any of these words and choose to use them in a way that is friendly, which goes against the original offensive intent. But this doesn't erase its legacy. This doesn't make it somehow incapable of harming someone, nor does an individual's reclamation counteract a cultural zeitgeist. For every gay man okay with being called fruity and every lesbian willing to accept carpet muncher with pride, there's another who resents it deeply. The same concept applies to insults used conditionally, like bitch, slut, or cunt. While you might accept being called such by a friend, its impact shifts when the person using it against you intends to hurt you. This is evidently unclear to Starkle, who claims, if someone calls me a bimbo and I embrace it as a compliment, I'm stripping the insult of its power. Choosing to be perceived like this is a revolutionary act against sexist rhetoric because it renders this language useless in keeping women down. Starkle further insists that bimbofication is derivative of camp, and therefore potentially encroaching in its territory and risking co-option of queer aesthetics. What this reads as to me is a carefully uninsulting response to what is yet another step backwards from the goals that this so-called corporate feminism wished to attain. What this author, and furthermore the target audience of young women, fails to realize is this. Feminism aims to challenge the systemic inequalities that women face on a daily basis. It is an active movement which aims to dismantle various aspects of systematic oppression. There are different flavors of it, although outside of the US, radical feminism is the only form of feminism, but ultimately, feminism requires an end goal and a desire for change. Bimbofication wants you to give up and become complacent with the forces of misogyny and sexism. Furthermore, it wants you to shut up and embrace them, pretending all the while that this is somehow empowering for the women who accept it and not falling into tired stereotypes that please men. This trend is just one of many that plays into hypersexualization under the guise of somehow remaining feminist. It's not even difficult to see why. It's far easier to perform femininity than it is to be gender nonconforming. It's far easier to pretend that this works towards a feminist praxis than to make uncomfortable changes in your life. If you really want to be a feminist, then the first step, critical thinking, is the exact opposite of what bimbofication wants you to do. This, dear viewers, is where we part. This was a very interesting topic to go into. Number one, because this wasn't my intention for the next video. I was going to do one on hypersexuality, and then the more I looked into it, the more I realized there were so many different subsections and subcultures and trends that were pushing women towards this goal of sexualization. And honestly, the first time I saw a TikTok on this subject, which, mind you, I refuse to get TikTok, so it's always through like Instagram or Tumblr, I was just shocked that anyone could see this as feminist. That anyone could see this as anything other than playing dumb. But what do you guys think? Have you seen any of these videos? Do you agree that bimbofication is a form of feminism? Do you think that this is something we should look further into? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.